SCP-965 is called the Child Breaker, and the thumbnail shows like a pink-looking teddy bear type mascot. Looks pretty creepy. This one's by SCP Exposed, guys. Make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos, and let's get into this animation.
Brody woke up and stretched. The sun was shining in through his bedroom window, making him squint. Suddenly, a thought popped into his head, and he squealed out loud.
Good morning.
Yes, it's my birthday. I'm 10 years old today.
Hey,
he jumped out of bed and ran downstairs.
Got a beautiful
he was
life ahead of
so
you.
excited because he was having a huge
Cake,
birthday party.
punch,
All of his friends had been invited.
presents.
His parents had promised him that it would be the best party anyone had ever thrown.
Very nice.
His mom was already starting to prepare the food, while his dad was decorating the garden with balloons and bunting.
Uh-oh.
Wow, Dad, it looks amazing. In the corner was an inflatable bouncy castle, and a pink piñata was hanging from a tree. Brody was really looking forward to smashing the piñata open. He loved the sound of the candy falling from its ruptured body. Just then, he heard the sound of the doorbell. He ran inside to see who was the first to arrive. It was his best friend, Sam. Brody took the present that Sam had brought for him and put it on the table. He would open all of his presents later when everyone had arrived.
For sure.
One by one, his friends began to arrive. They were all super excited and gasped when they saw the garden. Brody knew that everyone was thinking it was going to be a fantastic party.
Of course.
They played a few different games, but eventually it was time for the piñata.
Until something happens.
His dad told all the kids to line up, and he handed Brody a baseball bat.
Okay.
Brody stepped towards the piñata, but suddenly he found he couldn't move.
Something's up,
he was literally frozen to the spot. He could see that his dad had a concerned look on his face, and he tried to call to him for help, but the words wouldn't come out.
What's going on?
Suddenly, he saw out of the corner of his eye that the piñata had dropped from the tree to the ground.
The
It
piñata
was
is
shaped like a
actually
horse
the
with
SCP.
big round eyes that had an evil look in them.
Glowing.
It began to slowly walk towards him.
What?
Brody wanted to run for his
The
life,
devil.
but he remained rooted to the spot.
The devil.
He began freaking out inside as he realized what the piñata was going to do. It began bludgeoning Brody until his body began to rupture. He could hear the screams from his friends and family as they saw hundreds of pieces of candy come tumbling out of his body. Some of his friends ran over and started eating the candy. Within seconds, they became immobilized, their arms stretched out in front of them. Brody's parents watched in horror as their young bodies began to change. First, they lost their hair, and then they began to sprout paper-mache from their skin.
Oh my God.
Within minutes, they had all become clones of the piñata. The parents of all the children started frantically trying to revive them, but nothing seemed to work. They were starting to despair when suddenly the doorbell rang. Brody's dad went to answer. When he opened the door, 3 men in suits were standing there.
Fix it!
Please, help us. Something has attacked our children.
Fix it!
Instead of going to the aid of the children, one of the men took a syringe out of his briefcase and injected it into Brody's dad. He closed his eyes as he began to lose consciousness. Welcome back to SCP Exposed.
Dude, this is crazy.
Today we bring you Euclid class subject SCP-956. But before I go on, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on any more SCP stories.
We are subbed.
SCP-956 appears to be a common piñata, resembling an unknown quadruped. Tests have revealed that, although superficially similar to paper-mache, SCP-956 is constructed of various amounts of glue, sugar, an unidentified fur, and human tissue. It has also shown to be highly resistant to any sort of bludgeoning damage, with large amounts of crushing force showing no damage to its structural integrity. Though the use of gunfire as well as heat and flame have shown to be effective. The subject is to be kept at the approximate center of a standard humanoid containment cell at all times to prevent accidental activation. Entrance into the room is only permitted once SCP-956 has entered a dormant state. Permission to bring a subject into the room must be cleared by Site Director Stevens to decrease the occurrence of SCP-951-6, as well as containing further spread. Unless for testing, individuals fulfilling the subject's activation requirement are not to be brought within 200 meters of its containment area. Surveillance is to be maintained through security footage at all times.
Since it's called
78 instances of SCP-956-1 are kept in a neighboring room and are to be maintained at a temperature of -4 degrees Celsius in order to prevent melting or destruction. Any use of these instances is to be authorized by Security Clearance 3 personnel and to be carried out in a room identical to SCP-956's containment chamber. Any excess instances created by tests with SCP-956 are to be incinerated unless authorized by personnel with Security Clearance 3 or higher. as are any extraneous instances of SCP-956.
That seems crazy, man.
By default, SCP-956 remains in a passive state. It shows no signs of locomotion or intelligence, and displays no hostility. SCP-956 enters its active state when a human under the age of 12 years enters within 5 meters of it. Approximately 7 to 28 seconds after entering the active zone, the child becomes unable to move, holding any stance they had at the time. The victim is incapable of motion or speech, although it remains alive, and its rapidly moving eyes suggest that it retains awareness. SCP-956 moves towards the victim and bludgeons him or her until the torso ruptures. Upon breach, the victim's body discharges a large pile of unmarked candy, ranging from 23 to 1,323 pieces. Instances of this candy are designated as SCP-956-1. SCP-956 repeats this for any other immobilized victims before returning to a docile state. A victim can be removed from SCP-956's activation range if retrieved promptly. Upon moving the victim 12 meters away from it, the subject returns to its passive state.
Dad, you should have grabbed
The victim, however, shows no signs of recovering from its immobilized state and appears to remain in such a state indefinitely. Autopsies of unbroken victims show that their body had severely dehydrated, leaving them brittle. Autopsies also revealed that pieces of SCP-956-1 had begun to grow out of the victim's organs, using the tissue as a component. The amount of pieces appears to be directly correlated to time spent in SCP-956's activation radius.
That's horrible!
SCP-956-1's effects vary depending upon the age of the human consuming them. Humans at the age of 12 years or older go into a seizure within 3 minutes of consumption, with a 5% possibility of cardiac arrest. There is an approximate 35% chance of survival for such subjects. Animals suffer similar effects regardless of age. Children under the age of 12 undergo a different effect. They first enter a similar state to the immobilized victims of SCP-956, although they assume a standing stance, with their arms resting in front of them. The subject then experiences, in sequence, rapid hair loss, a sprouting of paper-mache from their skin, and a complete restructuring of bone and muscle. The process takes 9 minutes to complete. Upon completion, the victim has transformed into another instance of SCP-956. These copies behave identical to SCP-956. There is a 0% chance of survival for the victim. Initially, SCP-956 was classified as safe. However, following a report by Dr. North, the subject was reclassified at Euclid status. The following is a transcript of his report. SCP-956 has recently begun to show locomotion outside of testing. It began to wander around its containment, tracing the perimeter of the room. It did this for about an hour before staring at a spot on the wall. Review of footage shows that it faced this wall after deactivating during previous tests. Security has confirmed that SCP-956 is facing directly towards an elementary school. The school is 5 kilometers away. Reclassification to Euclid status requested. Site Director Stevens granted the reclassification. He also gave instructions that should its effects appear to reach beyond its containment, it should be transferred to Site 22. Which should keep it far enough away from potential victims.
5 meters
He also instructed personnel to retrieve any paralyzed victims, or SCP-956-1, and administer Class A amnestics to witnesses and family. What did you think about that SCP case?
Crazy! That thing could get out of hand really fast. Such a horrible thing to do to kids, man. Gosh. Guys, SCP Exposed, make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too. Thanks so much for watching. As always, it's Zueljin signing off. We'll see you next time.